is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Lori of the Almighty Acid King. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for being here.
You are welcome. Thanks for having me.
Anytime, anytime. This is a big year for Acid King. It marks 30 years of the band, and actually, this is 30 years of my existence as well. So it's crazy to see that Acid King is the same age as me. But
I know. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Old.
Yep, we're all getting old. but, but it's so awesome to have you here. Beyond Vision is the new album, absolutely kick ass. Is this just sort of picking up where you left off after Middle of Nowhere, Center of Everywhere, or is this almost kind of like stepping into uncharted territory for Acid King and kind of like a new beginning?
Both. Uh, I say that because the middle of nowhere, center of everywhere, kind of like was a small step in that direction that I, really thought about wanting to go into. And when I had this opportunity to write this record for Blues Funeral, which was, just the post wax subscription record, and he said I could do whatever I wanted as long as it was 45 minutes long. I thought, well, here's my chance to really go, to a bigger leap from that record and try, experiment a little bit with what I, wanted to do. And it just ended up to be Beyond Vision.
So, when it comes to the making of each Acid King album, does it start off with like a preconceived vision in a way? Is there any forethought that goes into it, or a certain idea, or is the songwriting process more experimental and sort of like a trial and error sort of songwriting process?
Prior to this record was pretty had an idea. I already had an idea of how I wanted it to be to begin with, but this is the first time that's really been. I've in the past, it's just been more of a jam session, writing songs, writing riffs, and then putting it together, and then kind of coming up with the kind of, I don't want to say concept, but organizing the songs together in a way that like really, it's like it's the rug. It's the rug that ties the room together. You organize the songs in a way that really fit together. So when the listener, um, you know, starts to go through the songs, they have more of an experience and not just listening to a record. But this is the first one that I really had a concept, an idea of how I wanted it to be in advance. In the past, no, not really.
Well, you just open up the floodgates of questions now because I'm a concept album freak in a way. But when it comes to concepts, like, does the idea of a concept obviously determines the lyrics in a way, but does it also maybe like guide your hand with regards to how the music will sound as well?
Uh, there was this record, definitely I knew I wanted to do a lot of like synthesizer sounds. I knew I wanted it to have no beginning and no end, and it was to be more like a soundtrack, play more like a soundtrack, rather than just songs, in on your record. So that is like that's the only concept I had really. It was that that there wasn't going to be, it was a journey from beginning to end, with no stops in the middle, and that for the listener experience, best to listen to, digitally on headphones from beginning to end, to get to understand what the thought was behind there. As far as the actual songs and vibe, that kind of came after. It was a little bit of both. It was very. I'm always into space. I have been since I was a kid. I know it's very trendy. I don't know. Sleep has the market on astronauts, but I've always been into space, and so this is definitely space oriented, but not just space. It's a trip, it's a journey, and it can be whatever. There's a lot of space oriented music and lyrics about it, but there's also, it's like whatever your journey is, whatever your trip is, doesn't have to be to space. It could be, whatever, wherever in your in your mind, uh, you know. So it's a bit of both. It had a concept, an idea of what it wanted to be, but as we started writing it, it kind of came together more in the writing process of exactly what it was.
When it comes to like addressing a concept or an element, whether it will be Crack the Sky by Mastodon, or Nevermore is Streaming Neon Black in a way, or something like that. Is your personal life or your own personal experiences part of the concept as well? Or when having sort of like a lyrical idea or concept, you're kind of like maybe distancing yourself and maybe using this album as more of an escapism?
No, I don't think it initially intended to be my personal journey, but it ended up to be both Jason and I's both, because once we started writing the record, the pandemic hit. The drummer that I was playing with left, and all of a sudden, this our this journey became our journey as well. It kind of just all came together in that way. And then through just quarantining and just the two of us being, the only two allowed in the practice place at the time, uh, those were the rules during the height of the pandemic. We had a lot of time to talk about, ponder life and so forth and so on. So I would say, yeah, the record did end up having a lot to do with us and our journey in life
Mhm.
at the end of the day, as well.
Well, and couldn't the same also be like the set for the entire catalog, whether it would be to like Zoroaster or Boosie Woods or Three or Middle of Nowhere? Like, does it almost seems like every album is almost kind of like a self portrait or representation of who you are at that particular time?
Oh, 100%. I mean, Bussy Woods, Bussy. Yeah, that was like a hangout, a teenage hangout that we would go to. And it was just like, you know, everybody would hang out, sell drugs, smoke bongs, party. Everybody had a Bussy Woods or your version of Bussy Woods, depending on when you were born and, where your hangout was as a teenager. So that was definitely, attached to me. Acid King, the debut, and Zoroaster, those were a lot of those early records are written about the Acid King, the original, uh, you know, reason why that's the band. That's why the band is named after Ricky Casso, um, the Acid King. And so those early on, the whole concept was Acid King and writing songs about him and the kids and all that whole story, that true crime story about him. And then after a while, it's obviously you can't write. How much can you write about it? I guess I tapped out that concept, those ideas, and written everything I could about those stories, and then I moved on. So definitely, free down with the crown. That had a little. You could see the tapering off of the Acid King stories coming. Kind of winding down a little bit as the records went on. And then, yeah, Busty Woods, like I said, teenage hangout, plus some Acid King. There's always going to be a little bit of Ricky Casso in every record for the most part, because he that whole book and concept was such a big part of the band. Um, Three, there really wasn't any concept behind that. That was just writing songs and putting them together. There wasn't any heavy, big concept behind that one. That was just playing rock and riffs. And Middle of Nowhere, Center of Everywhere. That idea came from. We were in Belgium. We played. I don't know where we were, to be honest. It was a small town, and we were driving through farmlands, and I saw cows, and we showed up, and there it was almost like some kind of like community center gym place that we played, and it was like really weird. And I was like, where are we? I'm like, we're in the middle of nowhere. And then one the promoter said to me, or the center of everywhere. And I was just like, oh my mind got blown. So I always thought about that. I thought I'm going to name my next record that. That
Shout out to
really,
that promoter.
yeah, yeah, totally. I just never thought about that. It just never occurred to me that
Yeah.
the middle of nowhere could be the center of everywhere
Yeah.
too.
You like in a way already answered it, but like you led me perfectly into what I was going to ask you, because I knowing that Acid King came from the Ricky Casso story and everything like that. I was wondering if maybe as you explored yourself a little bit more and wrote more music, and as you experienced so much, if maybe the name of Acid King and the story of that maybe developed its own context and its own meaning to you as opposed to just using an external source of inspiration for the name?
I mean, I'm trying to keep myself from saying a million times. So sorry, everybody out there. This is just the way it is. I'm working on it. Um, that record was written, and the band name was from 30 years ago, right? I picked up this book called The Acid King by David St. Clair, a true crime book, and that's when I decided I was going to name the band that after that book. You know, fast forward 30 years later, I'm a different person. So obviously I have the same band name. So there's not really a connection anymore. I mean, there's always going to be a connection, but I don't feel like, the same. The reason why the band was named Acid King and the Acid King now aren't really connected so much anymore. It's interesting. People ask me why I keep the band name. I have different members, and to me, Acid King's going to be me and whoever I play with until I decide not to do it anymore. And I don't see any reason to change the name,
Yeah.
um, because it's pretty much me now. You know,
Yeah, and I hope you
um,
don't stop anytime soon.
so I'm keeping it. But yeah, that's an interesting question. Um, I don't know if it has a new meaning now. It's just it's part of the. It's just I don't know. It's part of my life, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes, it's fair to assume too, because you write from a very personal spot, but you also have like this sort of external sources of inspiration, as you said with Bussy Woods, and
Mhm.
whatnot. Is it fair to say that like you take inspiration from both internal and external sources, and depending on what the source of inspiration is, that sort of like depends on the way you resonate with the material in a way?
Yeah, there's a lot of external influences in my music. I've been doing this for a long time, and I like all different kinds of music. So different, and not even music. Like this record was completely influenced by the Apollo 11 soundtrack, just because Matt Morton wrote this amazing soundtrack of all synthesizers, all analog synthesizers. And I saw that movie, and I was like, wow, I haven't heard something like this for so long that wasn't old, right? It was new, but yet he wanted to make sure it was all analog. And I was like, this is so cool. Like, I loved it. And that was a big inspiration for me. So it doesn't always have to be music. But then on this record, I was really inspired by Yoko Ono, which I know is like weird and people can't stand her mostly. But there's one particular poem she wrote that's on Rising that I love. That's actually, that record's pretty heavy. If anybody's ever heard it, Sean Lennon wrote it with her too. Um, and then Author and Punisher. I love Author and Punisher. I love the Drone Machine. I saw him like a long time ago before he, was as popular as he is now at this little record store by my house, and I was like, oh my god, the Drone Machine. You know,
Shout out to
um,
Tristan. That was a great interview too.
yeah. Um, and so, I channel all of the things that inspire me. And you might not blatantly. Well, you're not going to hear a blatant rip off, but there's David Bowie influence. I take everything that inspires me somehow and wrap it in. So there's I think a lot more internal, or external than internal. Internal might come from might be lyrics. I think I most channel internal, uh, maybe the way I'm feeling, feelings of life, riding my motorcycle, how I feel like when I'm riding my motorcycle, those kind of things. So I think lyrics really come internally, but music and concepts and so forth come externally.
And this is like a debate I like to have with artists in a way. Like, is inspiration really something that could be sought out? Like, can you actually look for inspiration, or is inspiration really like the definition of it is just something that has to strike you?
For me, I think it has to strike me. There I said, again.
Yeah.
Um,
With all the things I regularly say in interviews, I think you're forgiven.
um, I'm trying to think here. Now I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I totally just blanking on what we are just talking about.
No worries, no worries. It just if inspiration is something that
Oh
needs to
yeah,
be
yeah. If
sought out.
inspiration just hits me, or you can seek it out. Well, okay, so like I was saying, for me, I feel like it has to hit me. But if you're a book writer or a songwriter, any kind of creative person, and you don't have any, you're like, I want to write something, but there'll be times you go to practice and you're like, I got nothing. I got no riffs. I had a shitty day. And, well, sometimes a shitty day can make for good riffs, but sometimes if you have a boring day, you show up and you're like, you can read books, you can watch movies. There's things that potentially you could do to, um, kind of like get the creative thing going in your brain to see if that gives you ideas. But it's hard to seek out inspiration on command
Yeah,
for me. I think for most people,
yeah. It,
but everybody's different.
Yeah, I mean, because you mentioned like from your explorations in Belgium and how you came up with the idea for Middle of Nowhere, but like also riding your motorcycle and taking these inspirations from Wussy Woods and all that. It seems like you're able to grab them from many sources, right? It's not like you have to be in a specific place or be in a certain realm in order to like cultivate ideas, right?
No, that's totally true. Like it's the beginning of the band was all about acid king, and that was the whole concept, and then obviously throughout the years when the band was going to be around a lot longer than 2 3 records, that had to go to the wayside and move on to other things, and then you grow as a person. So yeah, there's a lot of different places to grab inspiration from.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's just your life experiences
And I've always
too.
thought that Acid King's music does capture a moment. Like from what you were telling me about Beyond Vision, you definitely exceeded that goal, like how it creates an experience. When I start with One Light Second Away and then you end with like Color Trails, it really is an epic journey in a way. But you also mentioned that you started writing this like even a little bit before during the lockdown, so a lot has happened between when you started it and it being released. Do you find it maybe like the longer you're working on something, the harder it is to sort of like capture a moment? Do you like prefer to like feel the same way when you end something as you do when you start it?
Not necessarily. I feel like this was the perfect situation for this record. I don't think it could have worked out. All of the things that happened during the writing process, the pandemic, the drummer leaving, I think that all of those things just kind of ended to make it what it is, and so it almost in a way lent itself to how the end result came about. I don't know if the record would have sounded this way without all of those things happening. So I think it was just part of the whole deal.
Mm. And when you like bring create an album and you bring it out into the world and we interpret it in our own way, do you feel like maybe a listener's experience, and even if they experience it very different than you had making it, do you think that could add another layer of meaning or add another layer of context to the material?
Yeah, absolutely. Because my journey's not yours, right?
Yeah, of course.
Everybody has a different one. So I've had people come up to me and tell me how a song I wrote like got them through a really bad breakup, or really changed their life, and I didn't have the heart to tell them that I wrote the lyrics in 5 minutes in my car right before we recorded it. So it's like, so, something can just resonate with somebody and be really meaningful to them. Even an instrumental um, can hit them in a way and get them through hard times, or whatever. And I love that. That just makes me so happy. It makes all the hard work that I do really worthwhile, and I'll take that any day over, you know, uh, popularity. If that to me is way more meaningful when someone comes up to me and says things like that.
Yeah. Well, I've always said that like Acid King is music that really does provoke a lot of thought. Now, I don't know if it's maybe like a Cascadian thing in a way, being that Acid King originated in San Francisco, but once you go from San Francisco northward, the music just gets so thought provoking with Yob Bellwitch, Isonortal. When you go up to onto others, and you get up to like all these different modern bands, Agalok. It just seems like the music gets more and more thought provoking as you move up north towards the
Oh,
Cascadian
that's
region.
an that's interesting that you brought that up. But yeah, you're right. That's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
Oh
know.
well, sorry, Southern California.
Yeah,
Your music might not be as
yeah. Well, no, I mean,
as
the,
I'm kidding.
the I mean, hey, oh, I think the glam, the LA glam does has a less could be a lot less metaphorical than what we hear in the northern
Well,
portion.
right. We're not singing about chicks and yeah. Although I do sing about motorcycles, but yeah, in general,
Yeah.
that's a good observation.
Yeah, coming from the East Coast where we're all hardcore and metalcore and all that, you move out to the Northwest. It just we express ourselves through our fists here. You express yourselves with your minds on the West.
Interesting that you came to that conclusion. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, that's what a lot of overthinking does in a way.
Well, a lot of interviews of different people in your career.
Of course, that too. I think this is over 2000 now at this point. But I got two more questions for you. But when it comes to like, when you're playing a live show and you're going all along the catalog in a way, and you're bringing songs from all different portions of the Acid King endeavor. Like if you were to do something off of the Acid King demo from '94 and then go to something off of Beyond Vision, does it almost feel like a time travel in a way? Like when you play something off of 3, it almost puts you back in the mindset of who you were in 2005, or Boosie Woods puts you back into who you were in 1999, etc. Or does the material evolve with you over time and it develops? It resonates with you differently.
I think the second it resonates with me differently. I play the songs more for the fans now rather than for myself because I know people love to hear Electric Machine. They want to hear Two Real Nation. Like there's songs that people want to hear, and so I'll play those. Um, but yeah, they don't have. It doesn't bring me back. I don't think about. I haven't played a song off of the first demo, the first recording. I don't even remember. I probably would have to relearn those old songs. I haven't played them for so long.
30 years of Acid King, we need that
That's
to
right.
happen.
Yeah, that's funny. Perhaps playing those old songs might bring me back to thinking about Peter, our very first bass player and stuff like that, who I still talk to and think about. Um, but the songs that I play in general, I'm just playing them now, and now playing with different musicians. It's been really fun having new musicians learn these songs because it's the first time they're playing them and they're really excited and they're weird. Joey Osborne was like a really unusual drummer, and when another drummer has to come in and try to play his drum style, it's quite challenging for them, and then it's really fun, and so then it gets me excited again about playing them because they'll be like, oh my god, this song's so weird and so awesome, and then I get like excited again about playing it. So it definitely has kind of newer meaning for me these days than it did back then.
And finally, is there at all like a similar energy that you put into your live presence as you do when you're songwriting? Is there anything that ties those two arts together, or is it a completely separate form of expression?
I think it's completely separate. Going into the studio, it's almost like you have so much more to work with. You don't necessarily have time. It can be very stressful, especially for a band like ours that doesn't have endless amount of time and money to sit in the studio for like months on end. You're there for the amount of money you have to spend, and you have to get it done with that amount of money and time you have to spend, and that can be really stressful. You have to cram it in, and you're there trying to be creative, and you're trying to throw every bell and whistle in. And then when you're playing live, you've got to then, especially with Beyond Vision, it's a very tricky record to play live. There's so many samples, and a lot of stuff was done in the studio, and it's a whole different experience now trying to play that live to an audience and capture the vinyl or whatever you're listening to the feeling of the release. And it is going to be a little different for sure. So it's a different experience,
Mm,
100%
yeah.
when you're playing live.
Here's the brain picky aspect of it, because in the end it is a very replicating element. You're taking songs from the album and just bringing it to a live setting. So is there anything remotely creative about playing live?
Um, well, technically, yes. You know, technically, if technical and creative can be, you have to creatively think about how we're going to play these songs. That a lot of bells and whistles were done in mixing in the studio that we can't create live. How do we do that? How do we do that in a way that, to our best of our ability, where we can still play them that sound close to the recorded version? Um, so that takes some creativity. You know, you've got to rearrange some of the songs, you've got to do some of the parts differently. So there's a lot of different things that go into how to play it live. And I remember when I was a kid and I'd go see a band, I'd be like, man, this doesn't sound anything like the record. I'd be like all pissed off. I wanted it to sound exactly like the record. And obviously, when I started to play the guitar and became a musician, that changed really quickly, realizing, especially for this record, the older Acid King songs, yeah, I have like one distortion pedal and a space echo, and like that's it. And I go and play. I don't do anything differently. I don't change. I don't have to swap out guitars. I don't have a pedal board. Now this record, total game changer.
Oh wow.
Bazillion pedals, got to get a pedal board. Like it's much more advanced playing live. So it's a whole different world now for that.
I saw the Rolling Stones in Sweden this past summer, and Keith Richards had a different guitar for every single song that he played, and I think they played like 23, 24 songs. So, you know, uh,
That is ridiculous.
God bless his God bless his poor
Yeah,
guitar tech.
no kidding, no kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but you know what? Their paychecks are a little different, so I think it's maybe
yeah,
doable.
yeah. Quite a difference there. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time, for such a really awesome conversation. It feels so great to finally get Acid King on the show. Is there just anything else with the release of the new album that you would like to promote in terms of tours, or what else we could be expecting from Acid King to celebrate the 30-year anniversary, if you're allowed to say? Of course, this will be uploaded
Yeah,
by
yeah, yeah,
midnight.
totally. Well, yeah, the record comes out on Friday the 24th, so that's exciting. It's been so many years in the making, and of course, the record plant, debacle that happened with everybody in the world wanting to press vinyl, and five record plants in the entire world. Um, 30-year anniversary, yeah, that's it's actually here. I mean, it's been 30 years this year, so there'll be some exciting things coming up, but I can't tell you about them now. But you'll have to just keep your ears open and your eyes open on social media for that. There are some tours. Acid King's going to Europe in August, and I'm just about to announce that on Friday as well, all the dates. There's a few U.S. shows. One in San Francisco. And if anybody Bay Area or close to the Bay Area, you probably want to come to the show. It's at the Great American Music Hall on June 3rd. And Jason Landry will be playing. We'll be playing as a four-piece, the whole record from beginning to end. So it's going to be a special show, and it's probably not something that's going to be done quite a bit. We're carrying on as a three-piece. Jason's got his own band, Black Cobra, and his his intention was never to join Acid King. He just came in, and we co-wrote this record, and he'll play when he can, or when he wants to. But we'll be playing as a three-piece majority of the shows. So Ripple Fest in Austin happening in September, and then just look out, I think, for as shows get booked here and there. But there will be no U.S. tour. I'm sorry, people.
Well,
Sorry, people.
sooner or later. I was kind of hoping we could celebrate our 30th birthdays together. So,
You never know. Never
yeah,
say never.
exactly. But thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Acid King. Be sure to pick up Beyond Vision. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.